All right, can my friend Jess Gatton come to the stage? Okay, Jessica is going to talk to us about the state of outreach. Hey, Jess.
Hello.
Jess serves on the executive team of Alpha USA, and she works with an incredible group of people to come alongside churches and organizations to make room for people who don't know Jesus. Before working for Alpha, she was a social worker and served in over a decade of pastoral ministry. And the intersection of these two worlds have given her the unique opportunity to help churches see the needs of the spiritually hungry in their cities and set the table for them to come into a meaningful conversation about faith, life, and meaning. Her passion is to see the church at its best all over the U.S. and to see Christians do their part in co-creating with God in their cities.
Thanks, Rachel. Good to be with you today. Always when these things happen, I'm reminded of how short I am, and I should maybe grow in my skills to wear heels. I have 10 minutes, and so there's a lot to say about the state of evangelism across the nation and also in our very own city. And so I think I want to say two things about it that I'm not going to bring you a bunch of data because it's something you already know. Christianity is in significant decline across the U.S., and that's not an exception to Columbus. And churches are asking the question more and more, why aren't we seeing people meet Jesus? And so we're saying we're in crisis as Christians. A bunch of people aren't saying yes to Jesus anymore, and tons of people are walking away from their faith. And then churches are saying, our seats aren't full, we're scared about that, and we don't have the joy of our salvation being returned to us by seeing lost people come home. And that makes me sad, that's like the general story about what's happening around the church in the U.S. But I have the very fortunate privilege of hearing stories every single day about people coming home to Jesus through churches in the U.S. and here in our city. And I want to talk with you about some of the themes that I'm seeing emerge from churches who are regularly seeing people say yes to God. And when we start to embrace that as a city, then we're going to have a movement of God sparkle like embers throughout when we start being reminded of the joy of our salvation. And we've had some stories of that at Ohio State and different places this year where we're seeing little sparks of embers where people are saying yes to Jesus, and then that just creating ripple effects over and over and over again. So one place I want to challenge us in Columbus is there's a really regular conversation that I'm a part of. The conversation is, why are people church hopping? Leaving our church and going to other churches. And sociological study about that, but I don't really want to because I would like us to just stop asking that question. That question basically just keeps us off of the actual problem, which is we need to be asking the question, why aren't we seeing people come to faith? I think it's a really comfortable question to be like, why do they go to this church now? Let's analyze the effectiveness of this church over here to see why our church isn't growing the way that this church is growing. Let's look over here at this little entity and see why are they stealing from us? Just stop doing that. Stop asking that question because it's a waste of our energy. We're too grown up for it. The good news about that question, there's a lot of amazing churches in our city that people can go and find God and worship. The image I have when I think about this is I have a very highly sensitive daughter. She's 8 years old. And something that they say in child development is that kids often will externally look when they're feeling that they're having inside them is too big. And so what happens with her is she feels so big that everything around her is my fault, right? She's like, Mom, you made me feel this way. I'm so tired. You made me feel this way. And that's totally appropriate for her. It's totally appropriate for me to sit with Esme and absorb those big feelings so that she can hold it. But as the church, we're doing the same thing. We're abdicating responsibility to fulfill the Great Commission in our churches and our communities to put people on mission because the feeling of failure or insecurity or fear of losing money or people or resource is too big for us to hold. And I'm saying that because I think God's saying, like, I need you to start holding it, and I'm a good dad, and I'm going to hold those really big feelings with you because they're very real. It's scary to lose people from our churches. It's scary to see the decline of Christianity go from where it was to where it is. Our world is scary. But we have a good dad that can sit beside us and say, I'm going to help you hold this feeling, and I want you to let it pass, because what I need you to do is ask really hard questions. I need you to ask really hard questions and be brave, because that's what ends up with us. Maybe what I need to do is I need you to do a really hard thing and go to school today, and I can't go with you. But I'm going to be cheering for you, interceding for you, the way that Jesus is interceding for you when you have to go to bat for your churches. So I'm presenting that. I'm saying, stop asking that question. And then I want you to ask the question, how do we see the kingdom of God come in our city? And how do we have stories where there's the joy of salvation being returned to all of God's kids? He cares so much that his kids come home. I care so much. Come home. We care so much that our brothers and sisters get this experience of God's presence and power in their everyday lives. Because, guys, we can't do it without him. We can't. So what about our friends and our neighbors and our missions that we're trying to do without his power and his presence? So I want to give you a new question, which is, how do we see the kingdom of God come in our communities? And then by seeing people come to faith. There's lots of angles. I'm supposed to be talking about evangelism. I'm a social worker, though, so I'm always thinking about all the things. A few things that we're seeing across the country where churches really are asking this question: what does it mean to see the kingdom of God come in their communities? And I want to emphasize that they're actually starting to shift toward the question of the kingdom, not my church. We have to trust God to build his church and orient ourselves toward the kingdom. In systems theory, they talk about basically, how do you create guiding principles that help you take you from where you are to where you want to be? And so the image I have of that is when my kids are learning how to do the monkey bars, they're like, I'm standing here and I want to get there. What are the handles that I'm going to grab onto to get me to where I want to go? And the success I'm seeing in churches that are seeing people come to faith are just 4 simple things. And these are simple handles that I am going to encourage you to write down and start praying for your church about. First, we need to identify the gap. This is where we are, and this is where we want to be. So we're regularly not seeing people come to faith in our churches. Then where do we want to be? We want to see people come to faith in our churches, build out a dream. What does that look like? My son, I have an 18-month-old, he's not 18 months, sorry. I'm very postpartum. He's 8 months old, but he wears size 2T clothes, so I feel confused very regularly because he's such a big child. And his dad is a jazz musician, and so he watches his dad play guitar. Just obsessed. He just stares and watches him and adores every single minute. And then he starts like waving his arms to grab at the guitar. And so we'll like give him this little tiny ukulele, and he touches it and he's like banging on it because he just can't do it. And then he gets so frustrated. He's like yelling and crying, and then he's like reaching for his dad's guitar because he's like, maybe if I play that one, I'll be able to do what he does. And he touches it, and then he gets frustrated because he can't do it. And so when you start to identify a gap, the big feelings come out, right? We're frustrated because we can't do what we see we're capable of. So that's why we need these handles. The first handle is to search your hearts. What Nancy said about the daily 72 times a day, getting to the kingdom, that's where it begins. The second thing is churches who are committed fiercely to prayer. And not just prayer for themselves, they're praying for the good of their cities. And they're doing it all the time, all the time, all the time. Every single person in their churches is invited to pray. The next thing is they have a plan for evangelism. That it is on their calendars. They're inviting people into spaces to encounter and discover Jesus. And most of the time right now we're seeing churches say that Sunday morning is for formation, and there's a third space for evangelism. It doesn't happen on their Sunday morning services. So that's very practical, but for the most part, that's what we're seeing. And then the last thing is they know their context. Where are people starting from with Christianity? I'm out of time. I was going to share a little bit about that with you for Columbus, but know where people are coming from. If you do not have lost friends, if you do not know where people, what suspicion people are bringing to you, you won't be able to do evangelism effectively because you need to adjust for their questions and the conversations that they want to have. So that's all for today.